I'm Chloe, and this is my story of how I got to RU and how my life is right now. I'm a cutter, or I was a cutter, and God took that away from me. And I was adopted in Greece with my twin brother, and we moved to Quebec, Canada. And at an early age, my dad was inappropriate with me. It started at the age of 4 and went all the way to 24 when I graduated from college. The Everyone had ways to cope, but I chose cutting. It happened to be something men in my family carried, or pocket knives, and I had an infatuation for them. And one day I played with it and cut myself and realized that this was a great relief. I would get so angry with things going on. I would get like I was a very angry young person. And when I cut, the relief was immediate. I later found out that it's the endorphins, and it's like a drug. And so as I grew up, every time I got angry or something in my life didn't go my way, that was my coping skill. And so I never really got to feel the emotion through and work it through. So that was what happened. And my mom, I was a product of a rape, and my adoptive mom had MS. And it's a debilitating disease where your muscles disintegrate, basically. And there's several stages, but she had the worst. So every year, she would, as I was growing up, she would have a relapse. And the doctors would say, oh, prepared, she's not going to make it, prepare for her to die. So as a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, up to, college, I would drop everything. I would prepare for my mom, mentally, for my mom to die. And she wouldn't. She would get out of it. She would come home. And that started a long amount of years where I would be so angry that she lived, because my emotions were totally focused on her passing away. And then I felt guilty because I shouldn't have these feelings. And I think I became pretty much bondage to my emotions, my thoughts, and felt very guilty about the feelings I were having. And every year, it was the spring, she would go into a relapse. And as that was happening, they would say, that's it, she will die. And then I would go through those feelings again. It happened the year that I graduated from high school, and that was really, she missed my graduation. It messed up my graduation, and I was very angry, and it did the same thing in college. None of my parents, none of my family was able to attend those very big milestone in my life. And meanwhile, I had my twin brother, but we were really close, and then he went his way and I went my way. The cutting became more intense as I grew up, and all of a sudden it never used to be enough. It wasn't deep enough. It wasn't, and I'm not trying to get into exactly how I did it, but what happened is in the age, I was November, it was Thanksgiving, I graduated in 1994, and I had left home. I was living in Boston, and my dad called me and said, your mom's back in the hospital, and the doctors say she's not going to make it. She's really bad. And that was the only time that I did not drop everything. And I said, Dad, she'll be fine. I'm not coming up. And that day, Thanksgiving, she passed away. And I remember sitting with these feelings of thinking God was this puppeteer that just liked to make little conflicts, or let's see how she's going to react for his own entertainment. That's really what I thought God was. And it really was, I had vowed never to have a God in my life, that I wanted to be by myself. And that I didn't believe that he was good. And I didn't believe that I was good. So here we were. And I used cutting as a coping mechanism from then on. I didn't have any inhibition. I just whenever I felt like it. It was just, and then I switched that for tattoos. And anybody who knows me knows I have full of tattoos. And for a year, that's all I did, tattoos. It replaced, I figured out the mental anguish for the physical. And I came finally, I got in trouble with the law. And I'd never gotten in trouble with the law, but for some reason I had 3 felonies, like right off, and I was looking for prison time. And I remember getting arrested for something that wasn't my fault, but in that state, whoever was called on would get all the charges. And I remember sitting handcuffed to this bar behind my back, and it was miserable. And I had said, God, I know that I said I didn't want you, but I know that if I go to prison, I'm going to die. I don't want to do this, and I can't do this. And my lawyer had told me that that judge was really, really bad. He was really strict, and he didn't allow any mistakes, and he was probably going to send me to prison, so be ready. And that day I went in knowing my fate, and the judge happened to be sick. I had another judge who was a woman who took compassion on me and says, you're going to go to the refuge in Florida. And I was in Vermont. And I was just excited to get out of the snow. So I did that, and then I did my restitution, and I started going to church. In 2007, after I left the refuge, I reappeared in front of that same judge, and she told me, Chloe, find a new life, find new friends, go start somewhere else, like Florida. And so I did, and I got a job, and my life was still in shambles. I was still angry. Nothing had really changed. Even after the secular therapy that I have, I was feeling better, but like something inside of me was still real void. And I sat down with one of my bosses, at lunch, and she said, do you know Jesus? She introduced me to Jesus, and that day, that's right after work, went to talk to the pastor, and I got saved. And that's when my emptiness in here started. The outside was looking pretty good, but the inside was not. And I started going to church. I started hearing the word. But there were some things in my life that I didn't want to give up. Cutting was one of them. So I kept cutting while I was going to church, doing functions with the church and, conference and all that. And I had a friend that I made at church, and she was very concerned about me, and she knew about RU. I first thought that, another kind of therapy, I don't think I can do that. So she had mentioned it, and I decided to go on with my own thing. And in 2010, after I got saved, I was still hanging around with the friends that I had before I was saved, thinking that I could somehow deal with that and still go to church and still be what I was supposed to be. And because of an incident, I ended up cutting myself because I was really hurt, and I had no idea. That was the first time that I cut so deeply that I had to have 2 surgeries to reattach my hand. I had never, ever done it that deeply. I thought I was in control of it. And I found out after I was saved, God showed me that I was in control of it, any cutting that I did. So I got stitches. It took me like forever to heal. And then I was scared for a little while, but then I went back to it. And still, my friend kept saying, come on, you can go to that. They'll help you. They will help you. And so I still put it in the back of my head, and I had to do one more thing. And so I did. I went along with the friends that are not good for me. And one thing led to another, and without my intention, I ended up cutting really deeply that time. And I thought, I just messed up. But I was talking to God, I was doing my devotions, but I just didn't know how to get out of where I was. And You know, this is the prime example of God's going to get you a leash to go a little further than you want to go, and then he'll pull you back. And it's not always the nicest, smoothest ride as when you get saved. And that it was a February 14th, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I cut, and it was a white floor. There was not one trace of blood. And usually when you cut that deeply, I mean, it. So anyway, I wrapped my sweatshirt, went to the hospital, and I sat there waiting for the doctor, and a nurse came in and said, "Isn't it great to be saved, Chloe?" And I had no idea that he knew my middle name, since that's not my real name that I would have put on my chart. And he says, "You know, it's never too late to start over." And here I was just sitting in that bed in a place that it wasn't my home, and having the idea like, I need to go back. I need to go back where I knew God. And I came back to Florida, and I was wounded at that point. I was very humble. I was low. And I had lost everything because I sold it all to go. Only friend that took me in was the one who referred me to RU. And she says, "You can stay here, but there's two things I ask of you. One, that you go to church whenever the doors are open, and two, you go to RU." That was my introduction to RU, and it changed my life. The first night that I came in, and I learned, you know, I was very interested in it, and but I wasn't totally sold on it. But when I listened to the testimonies in the first talk about how and what God is doing in people's lives, I was like, I wish they could do that to me, you know. And I remember crying and asking God to remove the two things that I know if I do again, I would die. God would take me home very early, and one of them was cutting. And he removed them. I felt like a whole load and heavy weight off my shoulders. I haven't cut since 2014, and RU showed me how to get to God in a direct way. When I was going to church before I would, you know, when I just got saved, I knew there was a point A and a point B, but I didn't know how to get over the bridge. And what I look at is it's the bridge that connects you from being saved and living a life that gets you to where peace and joy and all that. And you get to know about the scriptures. It makes you discover God, because I didn't know God until I got into the Bible. And they showed me how to get into the Bible and how to get to know God and how to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I'm not ashamed of that now. I am not that person I was even 4 years ago. And I don't want to ever go back to where I was. I don't. And when I got back, I had to make a choice. And it was this program, and let go of all the friends. And following the program without sitting on the fence and going, well, I'll do this, but I won't do that. And that was my Christian life prior. It's get rid of your friends that are not helping you. They're not serving you. They're not encouraging you. And then do this program. And I finally, I had nothing else in me. Everything I was doing was in my own strength. And when I joined this program, it was about surrendering. God broke me to the point that I had nothing, no energy. I was done. And I guess I thank him for that, because it wasn't until that point that I realized that God is the only one who could get me through this world. I don't want to get any of the glory for this, because I know that if I'm in my own strength, I will mess all this up. And it's about riding the waves, but depending totally on God. This is the program that makes me do this. That gives me the motivation to get up early every morning and spend time with God before my day starts. And there's no other way to do it. I go 2 days if I'm busy, and sometimes I don't get to do the full devotions that I want to do. But I've realized that God is dependable, And my circumstances in life is not dictate who and what God is. And if as long as I remember that, today I live in chronic pain because of my cutting, and that is circumstance of my actions and my behavior. But God gives me the grace to live through it every day. And what I'm saying is, whatever your drug of choice may be, it doesn't matter. We look at the big drugs like alcohol and drugs, and but we don't look at cutting and maybe shopping addiction or anything we put in front of God. And this program is definitely it. And I am so happy and I'm so blessed, to be able to get up every morning and have that hope that I do not have to be that person that hated God, and nothing I do on my own can ever please Him. But if you let Him and surrender and let Him live through you, you'll realize a great peace. And I didn't know it till I did the challenges, and I listened to the third talk and all that, and I made friends that if I call at like 3 a.m, they will pick up the phone and they will be there. And those are nothing, and I don't mean it badly, but they're nothing compared to what I had. And the thing I leave is with friends. If they don't edify you, they're not friends. In good times and bad times. And so I'm really thankful for this program, and I hope that you guys will give it a chance. Thank you.